Let's talk about book fairs for a second. Because when I was a kid growing up in part of Illinois, we had the Scholastic Book Fair at my elementary school. And for those of you who didn't have that or you're not familiar with that, basically the publishing company Scholastic, like the biggest seller and producer of like children's books, they put out the Harry Potter series after I was done with elementary school, but they also put out a ton of books all the time. They basically make a deal with a bunch of public schools around the country, and they've been doing this for decades, where they will set up an entire book fair in your school. They will put out the brochures that kids can take home. And if kids want any of the books, they can circle them and bring the money the next day. And now they have books. And what the school gets is they get a big cut of whatever the money Scholastic makes is. So it benefits the district because they're getting money from it. It benefits the children because they get new books that they're super excited about. I was excited when I got a book from them. And Scholastic gets to sell its products across the country. It's one reason there's such a behemoth in the publishing industry. So keep that in mind. And I'm going to get to the part that the reason I'm talking about them is this right here. This is the headline I saw that made me cringe for a second. Ah, yes. Kirk Cameron is taking on woke giant Scholastic with his own book fairs, or at least something he's a part of called SkyTree Book Fairs. So Kirk Cameron wants to challenge Scholastic with some conservative slash kind of Christian version of a book fair. And here's the thing. Whenever conservative Christians tell you we have an alternative to something secular, and I don't care if we're talking about boy bands or movies or theme parks, like you already know it's going to be substantively worse than the real thing. Like Ark Encounter is not better than Disney World. God's Not Dead is not a better movie than any movie that's ever been made. You know what I mean? Like they can't compete. And we know they can't compete because all of those conservative Christian alternatives are mission driven, not like talent driven. You know what I mean? And so they're just never as good as the real thing. They always want to inject an agenda, a political agenda, a religious agenda where it's not needed. And so what Kirk Cameron is saying here, and Kirk Cameron obviously being the former child actor, he wants to create this alternative. And the thing that he thinks is too woke about Scholastic is that because they have this huge library of books, their books include books that depict real life. They have LGBTQ characters in them. Sometimes those are the main characters. Sometimes there are plots in these books revolving around racism with or maybe, age appropriate discussions about sex, or at least the way kids think about sex. Because guess what? They do. And Kirk Cameron and conservative Christians would rather pretend that never happens and keep kids in a bubble where they're not exposed to any of that stuff. So, about this SkyTree Book Fairs thing, according to this book fair group, they have said we have more than 200 children's books and we are trying to get 500 in our library. 200. That's the number of books they have on their roster. Scholastic, by the way, has well over 1,000 books in their roster, and it's constantly changing. And they hold more than 120,000 book fairs every year. So, like, it's not even a real competition here. And the thing is, when you have 1,000 books that you offer to schools and students, it's not that hard to find some out of context section that some parents are going to object to. And instead of saying, well, my kid's not going to buy or read that book, their response is always, no kids can read any books ever, or unless we have pre-approved it or something. Like, we need to shut down all of Scholastic, not just get that book out. And the thing about SkyTree Books is that they work with a company called Brave Books. And we have discussed, I think, Brave Books on this live stream before. Let me show you some of the Brave Book books, because this is what SkyTree is selling. And the thing, look, I'm going to scroll in here. Look at this. You have a book by Kirk Cameron right there. And look at this. Look at the byline there. It says Kirk Cameron and Brave Books. Like Kirk Cameron wrote it, but so did the entire company, whatever that means. Let's see who else has written books for them. We have Elizabeth Johnston, who is like the activist mommy, one of those like moms for liberty types. What else do we have here? Dan Crenshaw. He's the right-wing Republican congressman from Texas. Jack Posobiec. He's just a right-wing troll on the internet. This one, Ashley St. Clair. Dana Lash, who works with the NRA. Who is this one? Missy Robertson from the Duck Dynasty group. Like, you get the idea here. It's a bunch of right-wing zealots, a bunch of trolls. That's who's writing all these books. And the reason I find all this hilarious, you know why they have the publisher's name on it instead of just by Kirk Cameron? Because this has come up in the past. Brave Books has actually put out a post basically asking people, they're looking to hire people to write these books for them, like ghostwriters, but then we're going to slap a right-wing celebrity's name on the books just so they'll sell, because no one knows who you are as some anonymous writer, but they might know Kirk Cameron. So you write it, he'll slap his name on it, he'll do the promotion, everybody profits. That's how these companies operate. So SkyTree Books is a company that works with Brave Books, right? And the reason this is kind of concerning is that Saturday, December 2nd, SkyTree got their first hit. They're working with the Spotsylvania County Public Schools in Virginia, and that'll be their first public school book fair. And it happens to be a school district where the superintendent removed a bunch of books from high school libraries. Kirk Cameron is coming to the school district to do a reading from the book he didn't actually write. And like, okay, let me back up for a second. Maybe you might think, okay, replacing one book fair with another is not that big of a deal, especially if the goal is to just get kids to read. Except the books offered by SkyTree, they usually only celebrate like traditional themes and avoid all the aspects of humanity they don't understand. You're going to get a lot of right-wing propaganda. Like, this is what families are like, but they always look like one type of generic conservative Christian family. Everyone is cis. I know the main characters are animals, but you don't see any animals who look unusual or different or might be in the minority of anything. And here's the other thing I don't like about these SkyTree books. If you remember any books from your childhood, there's probably a handful you remember because they have withstood the test of time. You know, Where the Wild Things Are, Curious George, The Berenstain Bears, whatever it is. Those books are, believe it or not, really, really hard to write. Because when you have a limited amount of space and you can't use big words and you're trying to talk about very simple, basic concepts, it's really hard to do that in a way that will stand out. The thing about the Scholastic books, and I'm not speaking about all of them, but some of them have really stood the test of time. They've been around for decades. Your parents are familiar with them. You're maybe familiar with them. You might get excited when your kid reminds you of those books. None of these Brave books, none of these right-wing books are that memorable. They just seem to think if you slap an animal as the main character and just write out some basic stuff like he was not brave, but then someone told him to be brave and now he's brave. Like, that doesn't mean it's a good kid's book. Your kid's not going to remember any of that. They'll read the first couple pages, maybe they'll get tired of it. They're definitely not going to want to read it again. And in like a couple of months, no one's going to remember any of these books. I showed you some of those Brave books earlier. How many of them have you seen for more than half a second because one of those right-wing people was promoting it? You probably haven't seen it at all, like only if you watch Fox, I guess. But you're not going to remember them. They're not bestsellers. They're not ones you're going to read to your kids. Here's another problem with SkyTree books, and I would love to show this to you, but I think the article is behind a paywall. SkyTree does not post online a list of all the books it has available at its fairs. Just a couple of them. Like, what are they trying to hide? Because they have to know what books are available, but they won't post a complete list, which is weird. Their website claims to have 200 books in the catalog, but they think they can't give it away. I don't know. I don't get it. And again, their only reaction to this is our books are all age appropriate. They never use sexually explicit anything. They don't cause gender confusion as if that's what a kid's book does. It's just weird. The thing about their books is, notice the ambiguity. Having an openly gay character in a book, for example, isn't sexually explicit. It doesn't turn a kid gay. That's not how it works. But these right-wing people think that if you have a gay character, that's somehow pushing an agenda. Or if you have a character talking about being different or being treated differently because of how they look, that's some sort of unfair veil where it's an allegory for racism. And like, it might be, because that's an important topic to discuss. A lot of kids have to deal with that. If your kids can deal with it, they ought to be able to read about it. But these right-wing books think that's activism, and they don't do activism. And their version of that is, we're just not going to have any gay characters. We're not going to talk about race. That's the way they deal with it. So I'm not worried SkyTree is going to replace Scholastic because they have nothing of value. I do worry that some school districts, especially ones run by right-wing school boards or gullible enough to believe kids are under threat because they might be exposed to challenging books, I do think they will take up SkyTree's offer to come to their school, which is interesting. Like SkyTree, like I said, they only have one book fair in store on December 2nd, but they claim that in the spring they have 100 schools lined up. I don't know if I believe that, but that's interesting. One librarian told a reporter this: SkyTree Book Fairs and Brave Books seem to be targeting the parents, not the children. And I think that's the best assessment of this thing. Scholastic publishes books that are made for kids. All these Kirk Cameron books, SkyTree books, Brave books, it's all about the adults. Because no kid is saying, I want to read a book by Dana Lash or Kevin Sorbo. That's who's the author I love. No one is saying that. Here's another thing about all this that is also messed up. And you may have seen this on the internet over the past few days. In Popular Information, the Substack website, they posted this week about another way SkyTree was trying to undermine Scholastic. And the story there, let me see if I can pull this up. Check out this tweet that SkyTree put out not too long ago. I'm just going to put this higher. We keep hearing kids are old enough to choose books responsibly, but this clip from a school board meeting in Texas proves otherwise. Find out how one innocent kiss in a Scholastic book led this young lady to porn addiction. And think about how they're framing that. They're saying, listen, we were just sitting here minding our own business, and this young woman we heard about, she talked about how a Scholastic book messed her up. And actually, what she says is she read a book, it had a kiss in it, pretty innocuous one for what it's worth, but that led her down a path where she got addicted to watching, inappropriate adult videos online. And that's what she was really disturbed by. And she wants to make sure kids today don't have to deal with that. And the answer is removing that book off the shelves. And SkyTree just happened to clip that and share that. What Popular Information found is that this young lady mentioned in the tweet, they know who she is because she actually works for Brave Books. Her job is public relations coordinator for Brave Books. And SkyTree, which works with Brave Books, is just promoting her like she's a random person who just happens to believe all the things we believe. And guess what? The saddest thing about all this, besides that deception right there, I forgot to mention, according to Popular Information, that woman in that spoke to the school board, she was homeschooled. How the hell did she have a Scholastic book fair? I don't know what she's talking about. But the bigger thing is that the Conroe school board that she spoke to, they fell for it. After listening to her, that book that had the kiss in it, they restricted access to it. And one of the school board members actually said we should replace Scholastic with SkyTree Book Fairs. To which that woman in the video said, all glory to God, because it's all a scam. They're all liars. They can't tell the truth because they know it doesn't help their cause. Just a little side note about SkyTree. But again, keep a lookout for it. Maybe it's in your community. Maybe they're trying to replace Scholastic because it's just a new way for them to shove their way into public schools because they haven't actually earned it by writing any books kids want to read.